Hello and welcome to Two Fat Brokers. I'm Ben from Abu Dhabi.
I'm Barney from Dubai.
And this video is about our predictions for 2023, which is at the end of 2022. Now, we've done who wouldn't switch their phone off? Who wouldn't switch their phone off? We've done a year in review of 2022. Now it's time to look forward into the future, into our crystal ball, into our magic pool, pond, something like that.
Look into my crystal ball.
And I will definitely not do that. And see what's going to happen. So what's the future like? So we've talked first about drivers. What's going to drive real estate? So a big one is interest rates, which look like they're going to keep on going up. How do you think interest rates will affect the Dubai market?
I'm a big proponent
Of reading?
of listening to podcasts.
Oh, okay.
And I listen to the Rich Dad Poor Dad podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And they are massive harbingers of doom, but they also are considering the fact that perhaps interest rates from the Fed will be reduced at the middle to end of next year. So that will obviously have a pretty powerful effect of going through 2023. But if you've got that kind of foresight and that turns out to be true, we'll have a lean year ahead.
You think it will create a lean year for Dubai?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Because
As the population-
Dubai historically has bought a lot in cash.
Historically, at the higher end, people have bought a lot in cash, but average Joes like you and me, we understand the benefits of financing, especially if you're trying to build some kind of passive income from your rental properties. Yes, predominantly there's a higher value of cash purchases here than in the UK, which is the only other market I've worked in, but it's not 100%. So we are going to be affected by the interest rate hike. What will really be more interesting is the amount of people who are on variable rate mortgages who are inevitably going to suffer from these interest rate hikes. You'll probably have less first-time buyers, but the real issue will be people whose mortgages have gone up and up and up, and then started to outstrip the income from their rentals.
So they'll be forced to sell.
They will be forced to sell
And possibly bring the market down.
Alternatively, if they cannot sell, the banks will then start to recoup these houses. So I think that's something that we're really going to have to watch out for this year, because I think that might be the headline story for 2023.
Refinancing. I mean, when we deal with that with our clients, we always recommend that people take fixed rate mortgages for as long a term as you can get, 3 to 5 years. How is it in Dubai? People take variable mortgages that much?
When borrowing was relatively cheap, people were, it was a gamble. Do you do a 5-year fixed, variable rate, and when all of the market indicators were that borrowing is going to get cheaper, your mortgage is going to become less. What's happening now with the interest rates was largely unseen by the average person. So I think I don't know the exact figures, but I think there's going to be a large proportion of people with variable rate mortgages.
It's true, because the interest rates are going up predominantly to deal with inflation, which kind of like snuck up on people. We can see that 8% inflation was coming from somewhere. And also the issue with increasing interest rates is borrowing costs for companies and individuals, get higher, so they do that less, so the economy slows down, and obviously,
people's income does not reflect the increase in, unless you work for British Rail, increase in living costs. Nobody's salary is going up 9-10% a year.
Well, I mean, Dubai and Abu Dhabi, the economies are doing quite well right now. Certainly, if you're talking about the UK, obviously it's a massive bone of contention, and the cost of living crisis hasn't been as bad in the UAE. And I think, would you say salaries are going up in the UAE?
I haven't had a salary in my life, so I don't know.
Anecdotally,
yeah. My wife's salary has gone up. I don't know by how much, but I wouldn't say in line with inflation.
She doesn't tell you?
She does, but I just don't remember. Obviously, I hang on every word my wife says. She's my everything, but sometimes I turn off.
So inflation, will definitely slow the market. I mean, and in Abu Dhabi we see a lot of, I think far more than Dubai. We don't have as many investors. We don't have many cash buyers. We have a lot of end users, and they'll certainly be put off by the cost of borrowing. So we expect that to slow the market. How is the other thing that might affect it is supply. How's the supply in Dubai? That rhymes. Supply in Dubai in the sky?
How have we not known that so far? Supply is on the increase. I mean, people are back to launching projects to the point where
what's
they're
going to be
launching.
handed over in 2023? Obviously, anything launched now is,
Well, no, because
for
anything
down
launched
the
now is
road.
going to be bought by people who will then be making payments, who then may or may not be able to make the payments or want to keep up the payments on something that might be depreciating. So I think the launches now will have also an effect because people are committing to payment plans ongoing for the next perhaps 4 years. But if the market begins to soften, people will begin to question whether they should or can keep making their payments.
So you're talking about the economy softening and people being worried about making their payments if they have higher expenditure or lower income.
Correct.
And what about like the actual ready-built supply that's going to come onto the market? Proper houses.
Well, they haven't launched the numbers yet, but anecdotally, again, I'd love to lean on anecdotally. It's always
saves us
between
having to do any research.
Yes, it's usually 20 to 40,000 units a year. Some years have been more, some years have been less. I would anticipate, those numbers continuing. So we need to obviously have the population growth to support those new units coming on. I think typically Dubai's done a pretty good job on that, but as the rest of the world suffers, is that gonna increase the Dubai population, or is the Dubai population gonna remain the same?
Well, I think Dubai had a massive problem in 2019 and 2020 of huge overhangs of tens of thousands of units that the price increases show those units got taken up. And you would imagine that a lot of companies, as soon as they saw prices go up, they rushed to finish projects that had perhaps been on hold for a while, and and it hasn't dampened prices. So you would expect that Dubai has taken up a lot of those units, and so therefore the new launches is just that. If you're going to bring on 40,000 units, you need 40,000 families to go in them, something like that. But you're not seeing any massive still. You don't think there's any massive supply glut ready to come online?
It doesn't appear so. But I mean, if it's only a supply glut if you don't have the people to fill them. And the question being, as Europe comes under pressure, as the US economy appears to be potentially entering a recession, as China isn't coming back as quickly as people were expecting, the obvious, the conflict in Russia and Ukraine, is that going to drive a lot more people to the sunshine? Which I think is what a lot of people are expecting or hoping. If that comes to fruition, then I don't think we're going to have pretty plain or smooth waters. If it isn't true, then we're going to have the usual problems.
There's not rain in the background. That's Barney sprinklers.
I'm having a wee under
Barney's
the table.
Sprinklers have just come on. And I think in Abu Dhabi, supply is still pretty limited. We haven't seen the population, I guess, explosion that Dubai has had, and we haven't seen the same, rises in rental and sale increases. But our units coming online have always been pretty limited, so I don't see a massive problem in Abu Dhabi with additional supply forcing prices down.
It's a pretty boring market, Abu Dhabi, isn't it?
It's consistent.
That's what I meant.
Boring.
Sorry, consistent. Another word for boring. I forgot.
So, someone once made a very good analogy between the emotions of men and women. So women are like emotional playgrounds. They've got swings, they've got roundabouts, they've got slides, they've got seesaws, and men are kind of like a desert. You see the odd, rabbit or rat or some, some such thing. But a bit more consistent.
Even keeled. So what you're saying is Dubai is the woman in the relationship.
Definitely not
That's
saying
a pretty
that.
bad analogy, Ben. I might edit that
No,
out.
I was saying Dubai is more the playground of real estate, and Abu Dhabi is more.
You've dug yourself out of a hole there. You should be in real estate.
Abu Dhabi is a garden of real estate. Yeah. What else do you think might affect real estate going into the future? Obviously, you mentioned already other economies, having difficulties. So obviously, conflict in Ukraine,
Yeah.
the struggles that we as British people know.
I mean,
that
it's
the
an
UK is going
interesting,
through.
it's an interesting dichotomy. I'm sure I'm about to use the wrong word, but Dubai is becoming. So when I first moved here, 2008, the world was going to hell in a handcart. The story on the streets of Dubai was, "We'll be fine. We're not subjected to the rest of the global markets, and the Dubai real estate market will go from strength to strength." We all know what happened. End of 2008, 2009. Prices were halved over the course of about 8 or 9 months. But the Dubai market, the Dubai economy, is more and more exposed to the rest of the world. And as the rest of the world suffers, will we suffer the same fate? And I've said it before, our lifeline is the population increase. And if we can persuade people, which the government is doing by making it easier to own property, buy property, own businesses, set up businesses, run businesses, yes, there's VAT, there may be corporation tax coming in, but it's still such an attractive place for people to come and live, and safe and sunshine and no. When the rest of the world doesn't offer up anywhere near those kind of things, they are the hooks that we have in the water to catch the metaphorical fish of people to increase our population, and that is our escape from any potential slowing down in the market.
I think it's a very good point. I saw a really interesting.
Really?
Well, I'm about to clarify the
Completely burst my balloon.
The muddy piece of clay that you've lumped on the table there. So I think there's two things. So there's a very interesting picture of where millionaires are fleeing from and fleeing to. So they're obviously leaving places like Russia and China and fleeing.
Fleeing's
and
a strong
UK.
word.
Yeah, not fleeing. That's a good point.
Moving.
And moving to the UAE. But I think some of these things are pushing, let's say, middle-class investors, which are going to be the bulk. So traditionally, Dubai has been there's been a lot of British investors. They normally rank in the top 5 somewhere, along with Saudis and Indians and Pakistanis by volume.
Yes.
Now, with struggles in the UK economy, that I think is going to dry up. They're not going to be investing abroad unless they're here on business. But the struggles in places like Russia and China, for example, will actually force those middle-class people who've been traditionally invested in their own countries to actually look to invest somewhere else. And Dubai is very well placed, with great links to specifically Russia and China and other places as well, to be able to replace those Europeans who are now struggling financially by taking their capital out of those countries and putting it over here.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I think. It's not just the struggles, because like I said, I think struggles in the UK is bad for Dubai because of the strong traditional links that have been there, and struggles in Europe is bad for Dubai. But there's this whole kind of looking more east, we see quite a few Koreans in Abu Dhabi, and they like to buy property. But much more that kind of that China axis, and obviously very strong links with India and Pakistan as well.
But I mean, the same can be said if the economy in the UK is drying up. People won't be expatriating their money. It's the same issues that that China and Russia will have. They're not.
No, but what I'm saying is that they'll want to get their money out of those countries, whereas British people will need it to live on. So I think they're looking for places to put capital because they are, unconvinced about the future of their own domestic economies, and real estate in the UAE is a strong option for them, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we hear a lot, that there are thousands of new millionaires moving to Dubai on a monthly basis. But like you made a very good point, they will not turn our real estate market around, or they will not support our real estate market. It is the institutional, and by institutional I mean the mid-level investor of both commercial and residential real estate, that prop up markets. The very wealthy, they can do a great job in helping, but the volume is at the mid to low income level. Mid to low purchasing power bracket. That's what will hold up our market.
Yeah, and that'll be the people that live here, or the people who want to deposit capital here.
True.
Yeah. So I think the UAE and Dubai is well poised for that. Hopefully they'll act in a bit of a counterbalance to the interest rates, because they not anecdotally actually. So we have quite a few Chinese investors in Abu Dhabi. They tend to buy cash. They're not big on borrowing money, and they tend to have a bit of it, assuming they can get it into the country. Same with Russians, but Russians are a bit more high end, aren't they?
Yes and no. I mean, obviously, the Russians that I deal with, they like to live in, the right addresses, but they want passive income here too.
Okay.
A couple of Russians that I've sold to recently, they bought their house and then they have turned to me and they've said, look, we want to buy some more units. Now, obviously, they go for things like the address hotels or residences in the address hotels, which aren't necessarily the greatest return, but they do carry, the kudos of the address. So yes, to a degree, they're quite brand driven.
And the UAE is a fantastic place if you want to park capital and get passive returns. There's no tax on capital gains. There's no tax on rental income. It's
free to sell them.
It's relatively cheap to buy and sell. Yeah. There's no foreign exchange controls in the UAE. So if you are someone who's got a lump sum somewhere and they want to, generate income abroad, the UAE is one of the best places you can do it. I mean, 6 to 7% returns is much better than that you can get in the UK, for example.
Risk reward though, much more volatile market. We've moved off topic again.
Right. Okay. So
anyway, I think we've covered
to finalise predictions for 2023, what do you think is going to happen to Dubai?
I think the market will soften. I don't know whether prices will come down, but I think the volume of transactions will probably soften. Towards the end of the year, I think, very much dependent on the news that comes out of the US and the cost of borrowing.
I think for Abu Dhabi, one thing we haven't covered is government spending in Abu Dhabi. So the reason why we had a, UAE-wide real estate recession in 2015 was the oil price dropped and the government, pulled back from its spending plans. I think the government's in a much better position now financially with things like VAT and stuff like that. The break-even cost per barrel. No. Break-even cost per barrel is around about 68 or something, but it really changes depending on what you look at. But I think they're in a much better position now to maintain that spending at Abu Dhabi, and obviously Abu Dhabi is heavily dependent on government spending for jobs. So I don't think we'll see that massive pullback that we had before. So again, Abu Dhabi is a garden. I imagine will be just very consistent. I expect to see either flat or single-digit gains next year as well.
So it's in single-digit gains this year?
Sorry, 2020 in 2023, single-digit gains.
Okay.
Yeah, that was what I would expect.
I've been Barney Crompton.
I've been Ben Crompton.
We've been Two Fat Brokers, and thank you for joining us.
See you next time. Bye.